guys in a mic. It's Jim Ryan here with Mark Rizzo. We are up to episode, 11, 12. It's 11. Okay, good enough. And we got a very special guy here today, a longtime friend of mine, Matt Kearney, recording artist. Oh, God, Matt, when did we first meet? 2006, 2005?
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I was 12 years old.
I wasn't much older.
No.
How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm really good. It's good to see you. I'm in Nashville. The summer heat is abating a little bit. So, yeah, I'm currently in my studio. I was working on a song today. So yeah, all is well in the Kearney household.
Nice. Well, we're going to give everybody a sample if they're not familiar with your music right now. We're going to give them a quick sample of the genius that is Matt Kearney.
Good morning, we'll see like we were free. Oh, it's your way. Pull me out of the dark just to show the way. Like ships in the night. You're passing me by.
I have my favorites among those of yours. I mean, I first fell in love with Nothing Left to Lose, obviously. The title of that first album we started playing when I was at Sirius XM. But I even really liked Ships in the Night. You know, you did. I know this is I don't want this to sound offensive at all, but it was kind of like brilliant white boy rap.
Yeah, kind of.
If that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. Early on, it was like a very dividing ingredient because I didn't start doing music till later in my career. So in college, I picked up a guitar and I could kind of sing, but I grew up on like a lot of 90s hip hop stuff like Tribe Called Quest and stuff like that. And so blending kind of spoken word storytelling with just the simple guitar chords I knew was all I knew how to do. It wasn't like I was shooting to do this thing. And I found early on it was definitely something that either people loved about it or it was like jarring to them. But yeah, I was just working with the skills I had at the time.
Great
So
job.
what did you
Mark.
do before
Yeah.
music, Matt?
I mean, what did I do besides like not barely passing school? I was a soccer player. So that was maybe in Eugene, Oregon. I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, 6th generation Oregonian. So
Wow.
when you were playing Oregon Trail as a young child, I don't know if you guys were around for that game. That was my family coming over on covered wagons. But I played soccer and, but I always, like during that period, I was always like into art. So fine art was something that I loved. And I had some friends that were really into painting and some got into like graffiti painting and like painting murals. And along with that came like some of the hip hop culture. So we'd be riding home in my 68 Volkswagen Squareback and someone would put on like an Outkast instrumental or something. And we would just make up songs to it, like freestyling or whatever. And weirdly, I found I was really good at it and like could just make up songs about all my friends and what we were going through. And so that kind of led to college when I picked up a guitar. I didn't have a car anymore, but I just would start making up songs. And all of a sudden I started writing them down and people really responded to that kind of early thing I was doing.
Question though, because we've had Johnny Resnick was a special guest for the
that's
Goo Goo
cool.
Dolls. And I know through conversations in the past, future guests we have targeted is Rob Thomas. Both of them said they started doing music because they wanted to meet girls. Is that what it comes down to?
I'm honestly not really. I had no grand plans for it. I wasn't a great student. I loved, I've come to find I'm like mildly dyslexic and was just ADD and all those things. And school was just really difficult for me. I didn't feel dumb, but I just knew school was really hard. But I had this English teacher who slid this poem across my desk and she said, "Hey, you're really good at this. And you can really write." And I was like, really? No teacher's ever told me I'm good at anything. And during that time, I was also really into photography and my art teacher was like, "Hey, you have something special. You could pursue this." So when I got to college, the only reason I got into Chico State was because I played soccer. And I had to pick a major and I was like, if I can write something, I can generally get like a B in the class. So I became an English major and my roommate had a guitar and I just loved, I mean, loved music deeply, listen to it all day, every day, not as a performer, just as a fan. And I had this turntable and I would sit in my bedroom listening to like Billie Holiday records and like breaking into tears. It just moved me so much. So I just wanted to be a part of that and feel that thing. And yeah, and I picked up my roommate's guitar and just started trying to chase like some of those feelings I felt when I listened to music. And I didn't know it was a career. I didn't know it could be anything else other than just literally my favorite thing to do by myself, you know?
Two guys and a mic. We are here with special guest on episode 11, Matt Kearney, singer-songwriter, who's now based in Nashville. Please like and subscribe. We need subscribers. It is free, and then you can ring the notification bell and helps us continue to bring this great content. So the first time you get on stage and you have any kind of crowd, was that easy for you, or was that
No.
difficult? Yeah.
No, it's terrible. I mean, because I wasn't in bands. I never had a band, never had a garage band, never played. And I played saxophone in the 7th grade for 1 year, and our teacher retired, told us we were the worst students he'd ever had. That's why he retired. Shout out, Mr. John. But no, so I had the performing side was something I really had no clue. It was more this like writing, being in a studio, and it was probably 3 or 4 years of me just being in a studio with a friend, and then people like your records and you're like, oh, I have to do this live. And I didn't know many songs. I remember there was a guy named Daniel Tashin in Nashville when I first moved here. That was the first shows I ever started playing. And he had a songwriters night at 12th and Porter in Nashville. Daniel Tashin actually went on to, he produced like Casey Musgrave's Golden Hour, and they won a Grammy for it. And he's had a really cool career since that point, but he was the host of the songwriters night, and they'd have like Duncan Sheik and Mindy Smith and Nickel Creek would show up, and you got 2 songs, and if you did well, they would maybe give you a 3rd song. And I could get up and I knew 2 songs. I had like 2 songs I could play. I didn't want the 3rd song because I'd like, it was just starting out. So that, yeah, it was really like, that's the very beginning, was playing a couple songs, seeing that it went well, and then kind of learning as I went till you're building up to like, maybe I could play 5 songs. But yeah, that the live thing was something I had to learn how to do, and I'm still feel like it's a whole nother art that I've grown to appreciate.
So
What's
how
the
did you
first
get
time-
discovered from there, though? Did you get signed after that?
Yeah, when I moved to Nashville, it was between my junior and senior year. I'd started writing music my sophomore year in college. So I had a couple years, I'd maybe like 7 songs I'd written, 8 songs. And I was pretty good at it, like from the get-go, of like telling a story, telling some interesting, weird story, and then having like singing the chorus. That was kind of my early model. And I didn't know this at the time, but my limitations kind of made me come up with like catchy melodies, that I couldn't really come up with like really artsy stuff. It was just like simple. It's undeniable how brilliant you are in an unreliable world. Shine like a star. Just simple stuff. And people really responded to it. And I met this guy who was a producer in Oregon. When I would go home, we'd record music. And he said, hey, I'm moving to Nashville. I want to be a producer. Will you help me drive across the country? And if you do, we'll record more of your songs. So it's supposed to be like a month. I went on a road trip across Nashville. We slept in the back of his truck and got to Nashville. And I fell in love with it and didn't want to leave, and just called home, was like, I'm staying in Nashville. I'm dropping out of school, which was insane now that I think about it.
How'd that conversation go?
Yeah, sure, that went over well.
Surprisingly, I think back on it, and I'm surprised at my parents following my passion for it. Like, they could tell this is something he is really serious about. And to their credit, when I got to Nashville, the first month we were there, a few like industry people heard our like 5 demos, and there was a little interest around like, what's this guy? He's doing this weird thing. There was a guy named Toby Mack who's in a band called DC Talk.
Yep, I know.
He like
Toby
showed
well.
up at our studio and he was like, dude, I love your music. And I was like, really? So I had that much going for me of like, yo, there's like this guy who knows what he's talking about. He likes what I do. Um, but yeah, that was really just the beginning, and it took a couple years of me writing, and eventually we made an independent record. I remember I like borrowed just like 20 grand or something absurd to us at the time to make, this is a little bit pre when you could just make a record on your laptop. You could almost do it, but we hired musicians and we hired a studio and we tracked drums and bass and did that whole thing, and made a record for like 25 grand. And at the end of that, we released it independently, and it kind of did well for an independent record. And during that time, I was opening for this band in Chicago, and Greg Latterman at Aware Records had heard my demo, and he showed up and he's like, "Yo, I want to sign you." So really, it was kind of that DIY stuff in the beginning that led to Columbia and Aware Records hearing about us.
I think that's how I first met you, was through Greg.
Right.
Yeah,
Now I
and
remember
Aware.
it too. Exactly. I remember
Yeah.
Greg because I was at Epic and I worked some stuff with Greg. Now it's all coming back.
Yeah,
Besides
you were
me,
probably working the Fray back then.
there you go.
And yeah, Greg was managing the Fray. He didn't sign them. Greg's still like a dear friend. He came back and worked on my management team. We stopped working together for a minute when we both got tired of each other, and he was getting tired of the music business.
Right. He stopped for
like-
like a while too.
Yeah, and he like started a pretzel company, and then
Exactly.
he
He
was like,
told me all about that. I said, boy, that's a
investment
big
bank-
change.
yeah, and then he started like, he's doing a lot of entrepreneurial stuff and teaching at Kellogg, and then like this last record, my new record, self-titled record, I sent it to him. He's like, "Dude, this is so good." He's like, "You got to bring me back on the team." And my current manager, Paul Steele at 888 Management in Nashville, I knew he knew Greg. I didn't totally get it. And I was like, "Hey, man, do you know Greg Latterman?" He's like, "I was an Aware intern." He's like, "I owe my whole career to Greg."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, that's right. I forgot. You were an Aware intern." He's like, "Greg loves this record. He wants to help." So he got on the phone, and Greg's like, called me a few days later. He's like, "I'm back on the team. I'm working for 888." So yeah, he's been in and out of my life this whole
Nice.
time.
That's
Yeah.
not a bad guy to have on your side. Greg's got a
No.
lot of passion and he's respected and he's got a pretty good track record.
Yeah, he's great. He's the best.
So what was the first time you heard your song on the radio?
I think it was in Nashville, and there was a small independent radio label. And during the period before Columbia, when I was at, I had licensed my record because Toby and those guys were coming from like the Christian record label world.
He's very
Right.
big and Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't really understand that world. I mean, I talked about my faith and different things, but I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. I didn't understand like this kind of industry around that. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't understand it. So that's why I was like, I don't know. I'm saying, I feel like I need to be on just a major label. Like, and everybody's like, "Yeah, cool, bro. Everybody wants to be on a major label." But when we made that independent record, we had some friends in town, and I licensed it to them, and there were some independent people working at radio. And it's part of the story that got us going was like, there was this format at Christian radio, CHR, so I don't really remember what it was, but it was like their hip kind of side. It was like the more pop leaning.
Mhm.
And in this tiny little label where I had just licensed them the record, like you can just have it for like a couple months in these markets, these limited bookstores and stuff. And they sent a download to all of the radio stations in the country, which was like, you didn't do that. You serviced them a CD. And it was like the perfect storm where it seemed just kind of mysterious enough. And the format was really wanting to be more general market leaning and like have more pull in kind of outside of their ghetto of listeners, and all of a sudden every station added this song because it was like this, who's this guy? It's this mysterious song. They sent a download link. And yeah, we were like the most added in the history of the format at the time, and had never met anybody, had done no work. And Greg heard that story. He's like, "I should pay attention to this guy. What's going on? Like something's happening." So yeah, that would have been the first time. There was a station in Nashville, and my friend called me. He's like, "Go to your car right now," and I ran out there and heard it.
Two guys in a mic. We're talking with Matt Kearney, singer-songwriter who I got to know very well while being at Sirius XM. We played a lot of his stuff early on, Nothing Left to Lose, and then Closer to Love, and Ships in the Night, and The Air That I Breathe. See, I'm just rattling them off. I remember you being so excited coming into our lobby, and we had that sign where artist names would get put up, and we were waiting for your name to appear for the day. I had a picture of it somewhere, and I went looking for it to bring it back up in this episode, and I couldn't find it.
You got to send it to me. I remember that day vividly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
there
when
was
we got talking. Mark, by the way, if you didn't know, him being from Oregon, I had said, "Oh, I'm going out to Oregon with my wife
I
because
remember
she
that trip. Yeah.
is big quilter, and one of the biggest quilt shows in the country is in this little town called Sisters, Oregon, and just a beautiful, beautiful spot near Bend, Oregon, where our buddy Dave Sholin lives." And Matt's like, "Oh, I got the perfect place. I can hook you up. This is great." And he hooked us up at this resort that was so off the chain. It was so great. It was
I'm glad
phenomenal.
you got to go to Black Butte, Oregon, the
Yeah.
greatest place. I love it so much. We just went for a week this summer. We try to go every year. Yeah, that was I
so
don't know how
beautiful.
happy, you don't know how happy it made me that like I could turn you on to Black Butte. It's like the special place. Nobody ever goes there. It's like this, like a community in this valley in the mountain range. So you're surrounded by mountains. There's like a field, kind of like, it'd be like a mountain valley. There's like a valley, but you're still a lot of elevation. And there's
Right.
horses running around, and yeah, that's cool. I like
And
Sisters too.
and it's maybe 15, 20 miles from the town of Sisters, which is this little quaint little town in Oregon, not far from Bend, Oregon either. And
Yeah.
they do this quilt show where they hang up quilts all over town one
We were
weekend.
there.
It's
We
just
were there
nuts.
this year. That we were during the quilt.
Quilt.
Yes, we were there. Saw a lot of cool quilts.
Yeah. So Kathleen had her quilt hanging up that year in
That's cool.
at the show. So that was very cool to go there. And I owe this guy for turning us on to that because it was a special place for sure.
Would that have been illegal at the time? Is that officially payola? You know,
No.
like you're playing.
Because
I
I
played a song and I got you a
you,
hotel.
you
It
got me
worked
a
out.
reservation, but I paid. So
Yeah.
it's Matt Kearney. He is here with Mark and I doing Two Guys and a Mic. Need your subscriptions. Like this, comment. The comments are on, and then ring the notification bell once you subscribe, which is free, so you can get updated every time we upload a new episode. So, Matt, we do this segment we call Top Five, and we just throw a theme out there and then we fill it in. I didn't let you know what it was going to be because I wanted to have you think on your feet, but we're looking for your top 5 favorite drummers of all time, music,
Ooh, top 5 drummers. Now, drummers are like,
bands,
they're-
solo.
yes, drummers are the most crucial part of a band. For my music, it's always been I've learned this over the years. It's like the rhythm section, and then like my lyrics and ideas. That's part of what made that kind of rhythmic thing I did in the beginning go off, was that you had to have like a visceral groove. So my top 5 drummers, not in order, I would probably I'd put Steve Gadd in there, just as like 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, groove. Anything Paul Simon does is just, he's my favorite artist of all time.
Okay.
Steve Jordan, because Continuum is just a masterpiece, and we opened that tour in 07, and he wasn't actually in the band, but just hearing those grooves every night, I'm just a massive fan of Steve Jordan.
Okay.
That's 2. Keltner, maybe, just traditional, but that's my Eugene, Oregon roots.
Mhm.
All the Bob Dylan records and
Yeah.
hippie stuff. I mean, Bonham, maybe.
That's on everybody's top list.
I
think.
know.
Yeah.
I
John
feel like I
Bonham.
have to say that. That's a little bit of
He
I
made
just-
my
yeah.
list.
the swag that he has is like second to none. What do we got? How many is that?
That's 4.
One more.
That's 4.
Hmm.
I mean, let's see. I mean, who's the guy in Gap Band? Uh, I love that kind of drumming. I don't know it that well. I forget his name. That like disco era tight groove. I
The
mean,
Gap Band drummer. Let's look that up real
I gotta
quick.
Google
I
uh,
that
don't
one.
remember.
that I'm trying to come up with a deep cut. Gotten. It's like the guy Dave Grohl ripped off everything for Nirvana and their rock. It's like the soul version of like
Charlie
rock
Wilson.
fills. There you go.
Charlie Wilson was the drummer for the Gap Band.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. He's a solo artist now. I think he does solo stuff.
No one
Interesting.
said him
Mark.
before. No one said him before.
No. Who's on your list, Mark?
Well, I was thinking about that because as a kid, I remember I would stay up late and watch the Johnny Carson show. And as a kid, I remember when Buddy Rich would come on Johnny Carson. It was like a whole big deal. And that guy was like playing everything and banging on everything. I'm sure I'm dating myself, but those that remember Buddy Rich, he was a pretty intense drummer that I remember as a kid. It was like, wow, that must be pretty cool to be banging the heck out of those drums. But, of course, you said John Bonham. Everybody would kind of say that, or you say maybe Ringo Starr because of the Beatles and just the part he played there, although he might not be as proficient. But Phil Collins, I know it's one of your personal
Oh, he's
favorites,
so
Jim.
good.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
he's
you
on
put
my
that in
list.
there.
Yeah.
So I
You
mean,
got one more?
As a Billy Joel fan, I'd say the original drummer, he had Liberty DeVito was just so, charismatic and fun when he played with Billy. But I mean, I read an article about how hard it actually is to be a drummer and what coordination you actually have to have. And considering I don't have that type of coordination, I respect that they're doing all this crazy stuff. And it's obviously an art form. And those
Yeah.
guys are pretty amazing. What about
All
you,
right.
Jim? What do you got?
I'll give you my top five. The last one will be the number one. So everything else is not really in order, but Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters, the late
Okay.
Taylor Hawkins.
Yep.
John Bonham, as was
We
mentioned,
all had that. Yep.
the Led Zeppelin drummer. Ginger Baker
I
from
had
the
that on my
band
list
Cream.
too. Yep.
He's good.
And then I had Phil Collins, obviously.
Yep.
But my number one drummer, bar none, Neil Peart from Rush.
Hmm.
Just
All right.
amazing to watch that guy play the drums. Late Neil Peart. He passed away a couple of years ago now too. But he's just phenomenal on the drums.
He had a lot of drums too, didn't he?
Yeah.
He had a lot of drums.
Yeah. If you listen to songs like Spirited Radio, you're like, oh my God, it's amazing. So that's my top number one drummer right there. And he
Wow.
wrote all the lyrics for that band.
Wow.
He was the lyricist. So, and that's what I was going to ask you, Matt. When it comes to making songs, your songs, does the lyrics come to you first or the melody?
Usually at the same. I mean, I have pages of lyric ideas. If I show you my notes, it's just would be
Hmm.
a lot of stuff that I'm always writing down phrases or ideas or titles. But generally, the good songs they kind of come at the same time because it's hard. I've never been one to engineer lyrics into things as well after the fact or take. Actually, you do that more. You'll come up with melodies and you'll have gibberish sometimes, and you'll have certain ideas in some places you won't have them filled in yet. But I've ever found it really difficult to take a poem and like fit it into a song because a lot of times the cadence of it is what, and the pitch and the key is what's determining the emotion, and like they all kind of have to happen at the same time.
Do you ever have, and I'm sure you do have, a bunch of songs where you thought there was going to be something and it just never worked out?
Oh,
But
every day of my life.
But have you ever gone back to something maybe 3, 4, 5 years later and then have it come to fruition?
Maybe pieces. Yeah, no, I've definitely had songs. I just finished a song on this record that was like 10 years old. And oftentimes it's not that I didn't like the song. It's that maybe I didn't have the packaging of the song right. Sometimes you get a groove. Yeah, there's always pieces that can show up. There's pieces that haunt me to this day. There's like this one track it's called Highway Sailor. I have it in my Dropbox. I listen to it all the time, and I've never been able to crack the code. I made this like track. It's kind of like funky, and I still haven't been able to crack the lyric on it. I had a song that was like this ballad that I've always loved the lyric, but I just didn't like the way, I don't know, just something about it I didn't like. And I just last month opened it back up and made it like completely different, put it to this like groove, and all of a sudden it's this awesome song. So yeah, there's always, you can resurrect stuff, but generally I have found taking swings at new songs tends to be more fruitful than trying to resurrect. There's usually a problem. If there's a reason it hasn't worked all these years and you keep trying, there's some flaw, the intrinsic flaw to something in the song that maybe never corrects itself.
Interesting. Do you have, here's another question I was just thinking of. When you go out on the road and you're playing, you know, you got all your songs to play. So what do you usually, your shows, hour and a half?
Yeah,
What
like
does your
90
set
minutes.
usually go? 90 minutes?
Yeah.
Do you include covers? And if so, what are your favorite covers to do?
I mean, yes, I do. We do covers. And some of that's just for my own, it's just fun.
Hmm.
Half the time there's songs I wish I had written.
Mhm.
Sometimes your set needs a little something like we played Dancing in the Dark for years. I covered it on this like iTunes exclusive thing back in the day, and it went like insanely viral. It was this really stripped down ballad version. So I'm like been associated with that song, so fans will sometimes yell it out. But and that's just because I don't by nature write these like raucous rocking songs. But sometimes you're in this heat of the moment, you're like, oh, you try to reach for one of your songs, you're like, I don't have anything that goes that hard. Yeah, or my bass player Phil Moore right now, and I should say Steve Gould, my current drummer, is I would put him in my top 5. That guy is so freaking talented. We do these trio shows and he plays like a perk rig that feels like he's almost playing like an MPC sampler, but he's playing it all.
I see that as a strategic move here. So the guy didn't throw a drumstick at him when he gets on stage the next time.
Yeah, well, there's
You
that
forgot to
too.
mention my name.
Yeah. But my bass player Phil is just insane, and we were messing around one day, and I'm such a Paul Simon fan. I was like, "Can you play the bass line from Call Me Al?" And he's like, "Oh, you mean like this?" And like, I was like, "Oh, that song would be so fun to play." So we did that at a couple shows. So yeah, it's usually more just having fun or trying to grab something you don't have.
Well, you must have a song of your own that you know you have to play every show. Otherwise, the fans are going to let you know about it. So which one is it?
We have a couple probably. I mean, Nothing Left to Lose is probably always
sounds
towards the
good.
end of my set. We played in the middle of my set in a few festival shows, which was kind of fun, just because it was different. But that song still to this day is something that I really enjoy playing, and when I wrote it, it was about. I actually wrote that song right before we went in to record. The last day we were recording for the Columbia Records release, and I hadn't put anything out, and I was scared out of my mind, and it was kind of about like stepping out into the unknown and these like leaps of faith in your life. And I don't know, it's a song that weirdly reinvents itself, and you find out you're having your third daughter you weren't necessarily ready for, and I play that song and it's like, oh, I'm back in this place I wrote it and this is how I feel. I'd put that one in there. Ships in the Night is always like fun to play. Hey Mama is probably a tempo moment that always is fun to reach for in a set.
Huh. Do you have a favorite venue?
The venues are generally linked to the crowds that you play. So you can have a favorite venue, and it's probably more linked to a special night and a special show that was just magical. But there's definitely venues like playing the Ryman's pretty cool in Nashville because I used to work at the Starbucks next door.
Mhm.
So it's always surreal to walk through those doors and be like, I'm
Yeah.
getting on stage tonight. Red Rocks is always epic. It's just usually a venue, the power struggle, that like the power dynamics of a room are, you're on stage, you're kind of in command of the audience. They're usually below you. That's just like the general makeup of a venue. At Red Rocks, the front row is like maybe 2 feet below you, and then all the crowd just goes straight up. So you're like this, you're like in a Roman cathedral, and you're like the gladiator they're about to release the lions to, you know, like the crowd is in the position of power, but it adds for this really just amazing dynamic where they just go up forever.
But I hear it's amazing.
Yeah,
In
we've
f-
opened a couple times for people there, and it's been always really special.
In
I've got to
fact,
ask you.
my son just asked me for a pair of tickets to go see Glass Animals at Red Rocks.
Oh yeah.
So I was able to hook him up with that. But a friend of mine who lives in Denver said, "Yeah, it's a great venue, but if you have seats down, you got to go all the way, all the way, all the way up the steps at the end of the show. And most people get exhausted from the altitude.
Oh yeah.
But they don't tell you that.
No, they don't. And you're, because you're at like, you know, a mile high or
Yeah.
higher. 'Cause
Exactly.
you're kind of up on you're on your way out of Denver. You're even at a higher elevation. And yeah, I made the mistake. We were opening for it was Train, I think. And I just was feeling it. So I just grabbed the mic and I started to run up the crowd just to
Ooh.
be in the crowd.
Yeah.
And I'm like and I'm just sprinting up there, and it's like they're big steps, and I'm got adrenaline going, and I get like a third of the way up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, like
I can't
Right.
breathe.
I
This is a
cannot
bad
breathe.
idea.
And I have to sing, and the song's like really wordy, and I literally had to just like stop singing. I was like, I can't. I was like trying to catch my breath, and I
Wow.
just sat there for a minute. Was like everybody sang to me. It was actually kind of a special moment.
And it's no joke, the altitude. You don't think anything about it until it hits you.
No,
You know?
man. We played
So-
a show at Belly Up this year at Aspen, which is like 8,000, 9,000 feet, and yeah, it's a different challenge. You got to pace your show. You got to take a few more seconds to tune your guitar between songs to get through the set.
Gotta catch your breath.
Interesting. We're here with Matt Kearney. It's two guys and a mic. Please like and subscribe. You can comment. And we've got all our videos posted up there. We usually post a new one every Monday. Please hit the notification bell and get reminded when we're putting those up there in case it's not on a Monday. So the new album, when can we expect? When is this going to be out?
Well, I released one in March. My self-titled record that I'm so proud of. I mean, I'm always working on. I have new stuff going. I don't know when this current thing. I'm still milking my last record. I love it so much. I was just really proud of this record. It reminded me of kind of when I first started writing, the headspace I was in, and I think it's some of the best stuff I've ever written. I know I feel like every artist says that though, on every record. They're
Probably.
like, this is the best I've ever been. But I really mean it. I was like, some records you get to the done, you know, like at this point I've made what is my 7th record, 8th record. It's like, you kind of feel like John Grisham a little bit. You're like, okay, like I did my best. Like I got to put out a book at summer, you know, like I spend the year writing, whatever I got is what I got. Some records you're like, wow, I really got it on this one. And other times you're like, I think this is good. This is I don't know. You maybe aren't that honest with yourself in the moment, but this record, I just really was just like, wow. I kept listening to the record. I'm like, I can't believe this happened. And usually I'm sick of the record too by the end of the process. I don't want to listen to it anymore. And my wife keeps putting it on in the kitchen. I'm like, this is a good sign. Like we really love this record in this house.
So I'll put you on the spot here, and we want you to be as detailed as you can. But what was your craziest fan interaction
Oh,
ever?
My craziest?
Yeah. Well, maybe most bizarre, craziest, or weird, whatever you want to do.
I mean, you've had over the years strange. One time a woman just slowly crawled on the stage, and then like from the front row, and it was like, and just like went, on her hands and knees, crawled, reached up, and just like pinched my ass, and then slowly crawled back into her seat, and then just sat there. And like everyone in the venue was like, we all just saw you. You're right there now. Like I see you. And I was like, security.
you can't hide. We
I
know
was in
who
the
you are.
middle. Yeah, I was in the middle of the song. I was like, I can't stop singing. I was just like, what's this woman doing? And security like got there a little late, and they didn't kick her out. I was just like, you're just letting her. She just can come harass me on stage. Um,
Wow. That's funny.
man, can I give a second story? My
Sure.
my favorite fan interaction was I was playing a show. I'd switched agents. It wasn't working great. It routed my tour all crazy. Um, we were playing in New Orleans, which is always a tough town. Nobody knew I was there. Like I had fans like, when are you gonna play New Orleans? I'm like, literally, I played it last week. Like, what do you, where I did, weren't you there? You know, and so the show wasn't selling well, and I was being pretty. It was at a point in my career when I was when I was my last record on a major label, and I don't know, I was just in a funny place, and I kind of liked it, but in this, I was just bummed out of my mind to be at the show. I'm like, dude, we're gonna play this like third full room in New Orleans. Uh, I didn't want to be there on like a Monday night, you know, and I did VIP. I do VIP things at shows, and there was a line, and this girl came up to me, and she had, you know, her head was shaved, and she's like, "Hey, Matt," and she's trying to. She's like, "Hey, I have leukemia. I just got out of the hospital," and broke down. She's like, my only goal this whole time is like, can I get to this show? This is all I want in life. Like, I have to make it to this show." And it was like a benchmark for her kind of recovery and her healing. And all of a sudden, you know, all my like self-pity and just went out the window. And to this day, it's my favorite show I've ever played. I remember she used to sit in the front middle of the balcony in this empty theater. No one's there. And I just was like playing my heart out for Emily, and like um and it was just a reminder. It's like, man, what a gift that you get to do this. Like, it doesn't matter. This isn't about you. This is
Right.
about like, this job I get to do is not about me. It's like so easy to become about you as an artist and rock star and people, celebrity or whatever they try to say. It's silly because at the end of the day, it's like we're the luckiest people on earth to get to do this job and like to serve people with music. And yeah, there was like, and she went on to like recover, and she's doing so good. And she came, brought her boyfriend, and they got engaged at a show at Monterey like last year. And it's still my favorite. It's probably my favorite show I ever played.
It's about how your songs connect with the audience when it gets down to it, right?
I mean,
All the other stuff is the stuff that comes along with it, the fame, the fortune, if that's fortunate enough to have. But when you hear from audience or fans and how your music is connected or just saved them in a way maybe you never ever would think of yourself, that's got to be pretty special to hear those stories.
yeah, it's been, it's like early in my career, probably a lot of this was lost on me. It's like, I remember opening for John Mayer in Madison Square Garden, and I'm just freaked out. I'm like, just don't mess up. Like, don't, you walk out the tunnel, and there's like these massive posters of like Keith Richards and Paul McCartney, and it's like, don't mess up is all I was thinking. And it's funny, like that meteoric rise that it felt like in the beginning of my career. I don't remember how much, I don't remember like having like these moments of joy, being like, can you believe what you're doing? And maybe that's just getting maturity and appreciating it more. But it's been fun this season, maybe the last 5 or 6 years, of just like, maybe it's because you can see, you don't know how much longer people care. You're like, well, I'm just waiting one day for everybody to wake up and be like, yeah, we don't care anymore. But it's just so much fun, and it's such a gift, and it's insane that artists can be divas, because like we're the luckiest people on earth to get to do this job. It's like, I don't know. Sorry, there's my soapbox. I'll get off it.
We're talking with Matt Kearney. It's two guys and a mic. I'm Jim Ryan. Mark Rizzo's here. This is our weekly podcast about music, radio, and label life. Did you have, would you say your relationships with the labels you've worked with have been, for the most part, really good? Or was there one you were with that you couldn't wait to get away from?
Oh
Without,
man,
I don't want to
let's
get you in
go.
trouble. Just say
I'm not
allegedly.
scared, bro. I'm independent. So we put out,
Okay.
I was on Columbia for 2 records, Republic for 2 records. I was on Aware the whole time. Um, I mean, it's insane. Like we sold 1 million records with Columbia, and they still somehow I'm like owe them. I'm not recouped. It's like absurd that they're like you're getting there. One of these days you'll be
Oh,
I'll
wow.
be in the black. I know. So it is funny that that ending era kind of that world when it was like the old school record deals
Yeah.
and just how backwards they were for the artists. And granted, labels, it was so much more just gut and they had no data. They're just literally taking a chance. So for 19 bands they sign, one makes it. Um, and I get that. They had to put up a lot of money and doing radio was insane investment. So it's not as black or white as I'm making it seem like, but I don't know. I have fond memories of all of them. I mean, Columbia was awesome. Uh, had to deal with certain radio people at Columbia that went on to follow me at Republic. They shall go unnamed, but
I think I know them.
you know the person I'm talking about. I
I
think
think I do.
they got canceled, so it's fine.
Exactly.
Well deserved. But yeah, there's always characters. But no, I have really fond memories of my Columbia days in Republic. Like Avery and Monty tried to sign me back before Columbia. So when Aware was moving and I had a chance to move labels, Republic was a great spot. We put out my Young Love record. I'm really proud of that record. It did really well. That it Ships in the Night and Hey Mama
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
And then I actually for a minute was being managed by Big Loud Records, who were like do Morgan Wallen, all this stuff. I wanted a manager in Nashville, and I remember Seth, who's a really smart guy, was like, "Why are you on a major label? Like, are we? There's like distro deals now. Like, you have a fan base." And I was like, "What are you even talking about?" He's like, "Let me break down your Spotify numbers." And so we put out my Crazy Talk record was my first independent record, and it was that since then that's been the kind of high that's fun to chase is like owning a label, owning your own records, putting them out. You write off on all the checks. You're like, do we want to go for radio? Like you
Right.
got to write the check. You want to make music videos, like okay, but it's just been really fun and the Crazy Talk we made did better financially than any record I've ever done, just because I owned 80% of it, and it goes to show how kind of strange the major label deals were back in the day.
Yeah, it's a big difference. Johnny Resnick told us, remember, Mark, he said, like, I don't know how you make it these days as
Yeah,
an
he said it
artist
took
if you don't
6
make it on
albums,
the
I think
road,
he
if
said.
you don't
Yeah,
tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, yeah, he also talked about that, but he also said that they had invested 6 albums before
Yeah.
he finally caught a break or had a hit. And nowadays, speaking of, you said about all the record labels, not only the ones I worked with, and obviously the ones I work for, but having to deal with radio, they really have to make that commitment. Now, are we going to spend the money to go to radio, and is it going to give us the results that we need? And that could be like another 5 podcasts talking about how radio has kind of changed and how
Well, I
the
mean, isn't it? And you guys could speak to this more than I have. Or back in the day, like Tim Richards at Tucson. What was the station?
Tim Richards. Sure, I know
Yeah,
Tim.
yeah.
Yeah.
He just heard Nothing Left to Lose. He's like, I love this song.
Was it
Columbia
93
didn't.
Q or something?
Yeah, Columbia didn't have it as the Mountain or no the something in Tucson. Anyway, they were AAA station, I think, and Columbia. It wasn't even Nothing Left to Lose was not even supposed to be a single. We had success with a song called Undeniable at like the independent format I told you when they added it all. So everybody's like, oh, that's the song we got to go with. We got the story, and Tim was like, no, it's this song. And he just put it in and it like kept doing well. And he kept being like, guys, I got it. And he like played it for months and he
Nice.
just had this story. And then some other AAA started adding it. And like, I mean, it took a year to get that song in the chart. And then once it got in they couldn't take it off. It was like, when you get a ballad in the chart, it like, they don't go away. It just like
Right.
stayed forever. But I mean, now it seems like you guys probably speak to this more. It's like you have to have data first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I could talk about the exact artist and the records that they were discussing recently, but there's been some, red lights on some major artists, and they're not gonna
Allegedly.
put stuff out allegedly, unless they see that there's going to be, they're going to get their money back and it's going to have the kind of return that they need before they launch that type of a campaign. But back in the day, like you said, there was no research. I mean, when I worked at Arista Records with Clive Davis, he just decided this is going to be the single and we're putting it out. I mean,
Yeah.
there was no, I mean, the amount of tools you have now, it's just scary, and yet it's vital to the, the bottom line. They're not
You know what
going to
else?
spend money.
You know what else streaming has done as far as my take on the whole thing? That songs nowadays are kind of going back to what they were in the 50s and 60s, where they're all less than 3 minutes. They
Yep.
get to the hook super, super
Yeah.
fast,
Yeah.
and
And they're single bass, like the
yeah.
albums were a thing back in the 50s, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, and gone is that theme in a whole album. Johnny Resnick was even talking about that, how he would try and, well, this is going to be on side A or side B, and where it's going to be, and what's the theme in the record, and
What
that's
song,
all
he
go.
said, would open the album,
Yeah.
what song would close the album.
Do you
But,
still think
we're
about
talking
that,
about
Matt?
albums. There's not that many albums. I mean, artists
yeah.
sadly don't put them out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still an album. Like I love making a body of work, and there's like a palette I enjoy defining for a group of 10-ish songs. I just old school. I'll always be that way. But how we release them has to change. It's like you're not the DSPs, the streaming platforms give you basically one look
Mhm.
per release. So it's like
Mhm.
you put out 10 songs, they're only like maybe focusing on one song. You put out one song, they maybe focus on one song. So you're better off taking 7 shots, releasing half your record before the album releases that's, you kind of have to do that now.
But do you get down granular, like, I think this should be the first song, and this should be right in the middle, this should be the last song of the album, or
Well, that's the old schoolness now.
Yeah.
Is you don't have any data before you put anything out. I mean, some people go crazy and they like I'll the only data I have to work with now is I'll make a SoundCloud or a playlist, and I'll give it to all my friends like the month before the record comes out, and like just give it to people. Hey, listen to this, and you can keep track of the plays, and you're like, oh, weird, this song, this one's got 45 plays, and this one's got 17. It's like, but that's the only data. You have to just kind of be like, this feels like a song I love, and strangely, I'm always surprised. There's always like one on a record that I didn't see, but generally like 4 out of 5, you knew which songs they were. I know when I'm making them, like the ones that feel special. At this point, I usually know. I may not know. I may have 3 of them. I may not know which one's the one out of the 3 that you could go to radio, but I'm usually right about the 3 on the record.
Well, I'm going to ask you to put me on your list for your next SoundCloud you send out.
There you go.
I would
I'd love to hear it.
I'd be honored.
Love to hear it. Matt Kearney is with us. What's for the rest of the year? What's going on with you? Are you going to be on the road or is it all about the writing and working on new songs?
Yeah, we're in the middle of like a big tour. September, I go out for 3 weeks. November, I'm out for 2 weeks. So we're going to like Northeast, South, Atlanta, Nashville, New York, Boston.
Do you like that better, to do like little chunks, like a couple weeks here, take a little break, a couple more weeks?
Yeah, I mean, we used to do it 6 weeks at a time. You just go. You like start the tour, and however many dates you're going to do, you go till you're done. That was like historically what we do, and it's the most cost effective, honestly, because you rent the lights for the time you're using them. That's it. The soundboard, no flights in and out.
Right.
You just go. But yeah, having kiddos and like.
Yeah.
We found like 2 weeks, 3's pushing it. And then you spread them out. So 2 in June, month off. We went to Oregon, we chilled. August, I had like 2 shows. September, we're hitting it. October off. Like that rhythm seems to work better for our family.
Does the family come out with you at all?
No.
No.
I wish they could, but it's funny being like I would consider myself like maybe like the upper middle class of artists, and like we're playing theaters, rooms I've always dreamed about playing, but to make it work, you got to, buses with inflation and COVID since then, they're insane to rent. They're like so expensive.
Yeah, that's true. I had an artist to tell me that it's very expensive now.
They've
especially with the buses.
tripled,
the buses were
doubled.
through the roof.
Yeah, so we're maxed out. We're about 10 to 11 on a bus, which they have 12 bunks.
Yeah, that's not good for a family.
No, I don't think
Especially
anyone would.
kids.
Yeah. My getting a drummer to stick around if there's a 2-year-old crying at 6 a.m,
Yeah.
that my band might quit after a tour. But yeah, like if you're a little bit next level, maybe you're playing like outdoor sheds, then you could add that second bus, no problem. So yeah, it's a matter of economics of just adding a whole nother bus for your family. Even though next year I'm gonna do like the family acoustic tour, and we're gonna go do like a 2-week run, all of us. But I need my 2-year-old to be a little more resilient on like, she's, yeah, my 7-year-old could do great on the road. 2-year-old, not so much.
Yeah,
we
it's a
need
little
we need
Terrible
different.
twos. Yep.
we need like 2 more years, and she's gonna be ready for the road.
A little different. Matt Kearney is here, longtime friend, great artist. We first met, can't believe 2006. That's many years ago at this point. You did Live in the Vineyard too, right? You were out
Oh,
there
yeah.
a couple times, yeah.
Oh yeah, many times, 3 or 4 times.
Like and subscribe. And there's 2 guys and a mic. Some other stuff I noticed going on this week. I see that our friend Rob Thomas is considering doing some kind of TV show, game show related. Didn't give an exact what he's going to do, but he's contemplating it, which is, I thought, kind of interesting. And did you guys see this story? This is completely unrelated to music, but I just got to get your thoughts on it. This couple, I believe they were in upstate New York, charged their wedding guest. They did like an adventure wedding where they did some kind of like extreme sports, and then they turned around and billed all their guests like $400 for participating.
Nice.
Isn't that a little ballsy though to invite somebody to a wedding and
I
then say,
mean, oh yeah, man. Destination weddings in general, you're like, really? Like, do I like you this much?
well, I get it for a
making me-
family.
you're
I got to
making
go to
me-
Thailand. Our son is getting married. He married here, but now he's going to have a wedding ceremony over there. So I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it for immediate family, but to ask a whole bunch of people to go somewhere and then pay more,
Yeah.
it's a little crazy.
mean, Hey, it's one way to do it. I wouldn't necessarily do that way.
Yeah.
Charging your guests. That's good. You could do like upgrade packages. It's like, would you like the champagne? That's 1995.
And
And they'll pass around a little
wedding
machine for you to
cake.
put your card in.
Yeah.
Have
They're
to
like, would
slide
you
for
like
the
a piece
cake,
of
yeah.
cake? Yeah, this is
Oh,
like
that's extra. That's extra.
like Spirit Airlines.
Yeah.
Wedding
I mean,
style.
nowadays you go to restaurants, they don't even take your card and go somewhere and hope, they swipe it right at the table nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the guy comes over with the thing.
We're very
Yeah.
European. It's it's how they've been doing it over there for a while.
Yeah. And I think I see also our Mark, I know you've probably worked Rod Stewart records. He wanted everybody to know that he's still alive and kicking. I guess there were some rumors flying around that the demise of Rod Stewart had happened, but
I don't know. I saw some articles that they put out about it, that he's coming to terms with this is almost at the end of his stage in life, that he thinks he's got obviously less days ahead of him than
then he has
be
it
behind him. But I guess
Yeah.
he's had a pretty rock and roll life and has been through some stuff.
Can he
so
sing still?
I mean,
I
I've
think
seen
he
him.
still performs.
Yeah, I mean, he's out there.
That's not what
he's
I
out there.
asked.
He's out there screaming.
That's true.
yeah.
That's not what he asked.
That could be a general question for a
Hey,
lot of the
man,
people
if
that
he
we work,
can.
man. Yeah.
He
I
just
love-
comes out and kicks soccer balls to the audience. Is what he
Have I
does.
told you
Uh,
lately that I love you? I loved that, dude. That was my jam. That was like
I
my
just-
mom. My
I
mom
don't know
had
if I
that
could.
CD.
I don't know if I could still see him singing "Hot Legs."
I don't think that's in the set anymore, man.
That's not in the set anymore.
No. But speaking of our friends, I know you speak about Rick Springfield as well, and Rick Springfield's friends with Richard Marx, and Rod Stewart had special guest Richard Marx came on stage and sang with him the other night, and that was all over the internet. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, Richard can still sing. I
Yeah.
saw him. He did a thing for us with Sirius XM 80s and with Rick. Wow, maybe 2 years ago before they let me go. Matt, they let me go back in February.
Yep, we talked
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah,
That's an accomplishment to be in radio that long. I'm just telling
22 years in one
nobody,
spot. Yeah.
nobody
Not one
lasts that
place,
long.
no.
No,
In
you're
one
right.
place.
Anybody around was really good towards the end of my radio days. It's like I could almost call who wasn't going to be there. You'd go out on the road with someone. You're like, this person isn't perfect in every way, shape, or form, because that's the only people that could stick around. Is like, yeah, it definitely weeded out. All that to say, yes, that's quite an accomplishment to be
Yeah.
doing what you're doing for that long at such a
In
cool
one spot.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
I had held other radio positions, but never that long. But yeah, in one spot, accomplished a lot of great things there. It was a lot of fun when I was there. So Matt Kearney, what's next after the new year? When do you think a new album is there going to be a new album in 2025?
always. I mean, yeah, it's my John Grisham rhythm. I got to get this. I'm in the writing phase.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the other one's still fresh, it's still new, so buys me a little time. I, we're in my studio, and I produced a lot of my new record. It's been really interesting. Just I don't have to put out more albums, like it is interesting playing this body of work on the road, and there's 10, 15 songs people want to hear, like interchangeable at times. And it weirdly does take the pressure off of some of that. And we've explored with different ideas. Like, is it, I'm just as prolific as I've ever been, but is it like, do we release more music just constantly? I know that's kind of the world we're living in. So we played with different ideas of that stuff of like, I mean, I'll always be the guy that loves to put together a body of work, but all the stuff that I don't, historically I would make an album and I'd have 30 songs, and you put out 10 and you work on a lot of them. And some of that process doesn't make sense to me anymore. I'm like, well, you'll do something like, this is awesome. Why don't I just put this out? Like, in the middle of the excitement. So yeah, I don't totally know what it looks like for me going forward, but we've explored with a lot of those different ideas.
Two Guys and a Mic. It is our weekly podcast about music, radio, and the record label business. Matt Kearney, thank you so much for being our guest. Always good to see you, my friend.
Mark, Jim, it is an honor. Yeah, appreciate all your support over the years, and it is my pleasure to be on here with you. So thanks for taking time.
I think next week we're going to be talking to someone else you know.
Who's that?
A label executive, long time from Columbia
One of my old
Records.
bosses.
Who's this?
Our buddy Lee Leipzner. Do you know Lee?
Lee. I love Lee. Lee.
Yeah.
Lee was there early
Yep.
days.
He was.
He worked
He
Nothing
was.
Left to Lose at Top 40 and Undeniable at Top 40. And yeah,
Yeah.
good dude.
I can remember him sitting in my office with Kid Kelly
Yeah.
talking to us about those records.
Yeah.
Well, I think I was on it already with the Pulse, and I think it was trying to push Kid to play it on Hits One at the time. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Great episode. Two Guys and a Mic. Subscribe, like, comment, and ring the notification bell. It really helps us. It's free to subscribe to, so it helps us keep this going and getting more great guests in here. Matt, all the best to you and your family, and we'll talk again soon.
Appreciate it, guys.
It was a pleasure to meet you. It was a pleasure to work your records at Columbia, work your records at Universal, and hope somewhere down the road we're working again.
Two Guys and a Mic.